just take my minutes. As a young Cayman person, I was particularly interested in the section of the conservation and the preserving barkers for the future generation. As we work to protect and preserving one of our natural treasures, we must strike a balance between honoring our way of life and ensuring these resources are conserved for future generations and visitors alike. And establishing baseline data for reef fish stock, conduct comprehensive assessment for the reef fish population to better understand current stock level and trend. So determine sustainable take limits. Set science-based harvest limits for key species such as the thumper and the
Hold that
golden
in and
blowfish,
see if you can find a way to hold the put it up. See if you can find
To
something to put
ensure
it on.
their long-term survival and ecosystem is balanced. And acquire markers each land used for environmental protection funds and designate all land acquired for public use and the parts of the Parker's National Park. Clearly, Rolston cares about our environment. Clearly, has a plan that can work to ensure that Barkers is protected for our future generation. This is one of the many reasons that I am supporting Rolston and will be voting for him on April 30th. West Bay North, let's put experienced man in the parliament to represent us. Let's put a man with a clear plan to represent us. And let's vote number 1, Rolston Anglin on April 30th. And that's it.
Good job, Alejandro. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, give him another round of applause for me, please. All right. Up next, we'll have Miss Marva Reed to deliver her endorsement of Mr. Rolston Anglin. Everybody, please give Miss Marva a wonderful, strong round of applause.
Good evening, West Bay North. Let's say that again. Good evening, West Bay North. So before I even start my endorsement, for those of you who are active on social media, especially Facebook, you may have seen that I was beaten upon today tremendously by people who hate you when you do what is right and you say what is right. Do I care? Absolutely not. I'm a woman of integrity and character, and I speak the truth. Who don't like it will just have to put up with it. So I just want to share with you that on March 3rd, I did a posting on Facebook that said, "To whom it may concern, I, Marva Reed, am supporting several candidates in this 2025 election. I am proudly going to wear their shirts with the exception of a red PPM shirt or not, and will attend their meetings whether or not I can vote for them, whether they are independent or a member of either of the other two parties of choice. And that's my choice. And the reason why I say that is because I am for country. I am for the Cayman Islands. I am not for a color or a party or a handout. There's no one absolutely who can buy me other than God. I am also going to be present, and I'm going to use my voice for the many who are unable because their jobs would be in jeopardy to even be seen at any rally, much less to have a voice, yet they still contact them behind closed doors begging for their ex or a tick. That struggle for many is real. And then I ended by saying, judge me all you want, as I, Marva Bodner Reed, have my priorities in order. Do you? It is wonderful to be here with you and to endorse your candidate and your next Member of Parliament for West Bay North, Mr. Rolston Anglin, who's #1 on the ballot. I am no stranger to West Bay, as my late father, Roosevelt Bodden, was married to a West Bay resident, and though I was raised in Cayman Brac, every trip I made to Grand Cayman, I visited and spent time with my father and my stepmother. So I know many Bayers, as one would say. Yes. However, when I met and became best friends with Miss Rachel Evans in 1987, and then later with Miss Paula Manderson, I considered myself a resident of West Bay, and you could always find me with either one of them in West Bay. Being around Miss Evans and her late father, I learned of politics quickly, and they both finally convinced me by my 20th birthday that if I wanted to have a say in my country, I need to register to vote. So I'm saying that to encourage all young Caymanians who are out there who never got the opportunity or thought they never had the opportunity. There is always opportunity, but you must make that right choice to go and register and vote. That's how you get to have a say in your country. I did so without hesitation, and it was from there I met, I studied, followed and supported many politicians in the Cayman Islands, including Mr. Rolston Anglin. I was there with my friends when Rolston was voted into Parliament in 2000, and in 2005 after Hurricane Ivan, and then in 2009. And it was at this election Rolston became the Minister of Education, Financial Services, and Employment and Deputy Premier. He immediately hit the ground running and resolved one major issue that we were faced with at the one high school at the time, John Gray High School, where we had experienced 3 principals in the first term of one school year. As the PTA president at John Gray High School then, and I still am now currently with my last daughter going through John Gray High School, I am still the PTA president now. I got the opportunity to build that one-on-one relationship with Rolston, his chief officer, and the staff of the Department of Education. And it was during this tenure that PTAs of all government schools in the Cayman Islands felt appreciated and inclusive with the partnership between the PTAs, the ministry, and the departments. If you are not aware, let me inform you that Rolston is the minister that was responsible for leading a whole scale of reform of the public education system, and that includes, just to name a few, but not limited to, the restructuring of 2 secondary schools to facilitate overcrowding of one school and based on the rapid development of infrastructure in our country. This was absolutely necessary. And in fact, let me just say today, we probably need a 3rd one because our generations continue to grow. And right now, I can tell you that most of the current high schools are already overcrowded and have outgrown themselves. He was also responsible for early childhood care and education curriculum development. New graduation criteria that is working tremendously. The professional standards for teachers and principals, of which we need to get back to and enforce. And the 5-year National Strategic Plan for Education. Mr. Rolston was responsible for the development and implemented 3 traineeships and apprenticeships. He also oversaw the reform at the University College of the Cayman Islands, introducing numerous programs. He was quite busy in his ministry as he was responsible for a $4 million operating budget and over some 800 staff. But above all this and much more, he was responsible for in implementation and development. Rolston took the time and he met with us, the PTA presidents of the government schools, and encouraged us to form a Cayman Islands National Parent Teachers Organization. As a result of this collaboration, and though the organization was not formed, he took the time to meet with us monthly to hear the concerns and crises of what was happening in our schools. And it was during this tenure that the development of gangs were even identified. He allowed us the opportunity to have our input in solutions, and he was very present and involved in our education system. Unfortunately, it's all fell apart at the end of his tenure. And though we tried to keep the momentum, other ministers were not interested in the movement. Let me state that Mr. Anglin has been the best education minister since Mr. Roy Budden, and I have no reservations in saying that publicly. Ladies and gentlemen, there is much change that needs to be made again within the education system and in the whole entire government. And Mr. Anglin is the experienced and knowledgeable candidate for that, as well as the candidate to represent your constituency. Tonight, I am honored to endorse Rolston Anglin, and I encourage you that on Wednesday, April 30th, you make the choice to fill the job with the best candidate that fits the description. Vote number 1, West Bay North, Rolston Anglin.
Amen, Miss Marva. Give her a round of applause, please. Up next, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special version of Get Up, Stand Up by Bob Marley, being sung by the one and only Mr. Rico Rolando.
If you
Please give him a round of applause.
Check. All right, guys, so we need to get up for this one. We need to get up, we need to stand up. Woo! Are you voting for?
Rolston Anglin! Rolston Anglin!
I was going to say you guys think it might be better on the outside. For one reason, two reasons. The microphone pole itself is in the direction of this way, as well as there's already light coming from here. So if you use this side, you can... Oh, it's just a stand for the phone? Okay, perfect.
We will get to the meat of the matter now, the meat potatoes. It's time for me to do the formal introduction of our Wednesday board candidate before he takes the stage. Mr. Rolston Anglin attended Sir John Campbell Primary School, the Cayman Islands Middle School, and the Cayman Islands High School. He then went on to attend sixth form there. He was the proud son of Mr. Anglin, better known as Mr. Mac from the Turtle Center, and the late Ari Corvina Anglin, better known as Miss Corvina. Our family did not come from money. My grandmother Corvina cleaned condos and office buildings, and my grandfather was a retired career seaman, working as a painter. However, Roy was raised to work hard and to truly appreciate the value of getting education. As such, Roy went to earn an academic scholarship, as Anna said, from the major accounting firm, Price Waterhouse, now called Price Waterhouse Coopers, to attend university. Roy's exceptional academic achievements were so amazing that one of the world's most prestigious companies invested tens of thousands of dollars into his education. His story of working hard and earning scholarship is a living example that shows that no matter where you come from, you can reach for the stars and achieve your God-given potential. Roy and his family and our Wednesday community very, very proud when he graduated with honors from the Ohio State University. But wait, Roy is not finished there. He then passed the certified public accountant exam in 1896 on his first attempt. Only 8% of all people achieve their CPA on their first attempt. 8% in the world. This is the kind of razor-sharp focus, intelligence, and determination we need to represent us folks. Using his CPA certification, Roy went on to live and work in New York City in the late 90s for a few years. then came back home to Cayman to start his lucrative career. He was on track to become a partner at his firm, making lots of money and have a very comfortable life for himself and his family. But God placed a very different calling in his heart. To everyone's surprise, and many a warning thought to him, Wally left all behind in April of 2000 to stand for elections and to represent his people. Who would ask for second place and think about that, right? Wally was well on his way to living a great life with his young family and making a great salary. Yet he chose to walk away from that and to pursue public service. This is the kind of Cayman patriot Wally is. When he won his seat for the first time in November of 2000, at just 28 years old, he was the youngest person ever elected in the history of West Bay politics. Let me repeat, the youngest ever elected in the Wally went on to serve 3 terms as a member of Parliament, or a member of the Legislative Assembly as it used to be called, from 2000 to 2013, as Mr. Martin mentioned. Let me break down his tenure, since some people don't understand how certain things that are really important. From 2000 to 2005, he was a backbench member. He was not a member of cabinet or in charge of any ministry, but was contributing on different boards to support government business. From 2005 to 2009, he was a member of the opposition, which would have been against PPA-led government at the time. Again, not in charge of any ministry, but worked hard to show the people of the Cayman Islands why he and his team deserve to be the next government. That is the role of the opposition. They do not control the government. During 2009 to 2013, he was appointed as the Minister of Education, and he is still known for this role to this day. Many former civil servants can confirm he was the best education minister the Cayman Islands has ever seen. Well, wait till I leave that whole show. I won't get all in all time. Let me give you a brief reminder of who he was as education minister. This is a summary by you. As a young minister, Ron remembered what it was like going into the public education system. He focused on a mission to reform the system so that it could give every Caymanian child the opportunity that he was afforded to chase his dreams. Get your pen and papers, folks, and listen now to a few of his accomplishments. Ron reintroduced reception, which is still in effect today. Ron built expansions at the Sir John Edinburgh Primary School, Georgetown Primary School, Savannah Primary School, now the Director Primary School, and the Town Primary School, now the Theory Primary School. Ron introduced the first food health standards for canteens in government schools. Ron implemented enhanced education criteria for government high schools. He launched the Cayman Islands Further Education Center, known as CIFA, which many young people can attest, and if you were at the launch rally, you will remember the young man Jeremy, who gave his testimony as to how CIFA helped him. Ron established the dual mentorship program at UCCI, which I personally have the benefit of enjoying as a student. Ron launched an extended after-school program for secondary and primary school students. Again, these are but a few of his accomplishments while he was Minister of Education. I say this not to brag, it is simply Rolston was busy during his tenure, working with the people and for the people. So So for anybody listening to me here in the audience, in the cars, or online, this is just one of the reasons why I will personally walk into that polling booth on April 30th and proudly cast my vote for Mr. Rolston Anglin. I implore all of you to vote for Rolston Anglin on April 30th. Our country, our families, our children, and future generations need a leader like Rolston, now more than ever. Before I bring our candidate on stage, and I'm making the noise of my hand, after his speech, please feel free to stay and enjoy the music and get a little refreshments, take pictures and all that, okay? And now, without further ado, please welcome to the stage the man of the hour, the man with the plan, and our number one candidate.
Thank you, Rashad, for that wonderful introduction. But before I start, let me thank each and every one of you who has come out to the meeting tonight. And as I stand here, I see those of you in the chairs, those over in the cars, those over to the left, over to the right. I want to thank every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and join us. Before I start my remarks, I want to ask if we will observe a brief moment of silence for a lady who was a friend of mine, a supporter, a good woman, who was from right here in this area, just over to my left actually, is Martha Howard Bonner, who was with us last election, but is not here with us this election. Let us observe 30 seconds of silence in her memory. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for paying those respects. I believe that when you come into areas, any area that you're going to campaign in, you must know your people. You must remember your people. You must understand the humanity of an election. And I, during this campaign, have been reminded many times of how important it is for us to join together as we look to make a positive change in our country. And that change, my friends, starts with us here in West Bay North. I want to say to everyone here, everyone who's watching us online, talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors. Because at the end of the day, you can say you support me. And I appreciate that. I cherish that. In fact, I'm humbled by it. However, if you don't come out and vote, we won't have the change that our country so desperately needs. You see, it's easy to say, by one vote will count. And technically, if the election is decided by more than one vote, that might be correct. However, if 100 people stay home and say that, then you see how important that one vote is. Because each person may say that their individual one vote doesn't count. But when you add up those one votes, they can amass into a huge number of votes. And so, one thing that I want to implore all of you, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family. In fact, if you got somebody you haven't talked to in a long time, use this as a good excuse to talk to them, because we need everyone to come out and vote on April the 30th. Because it's only in voting that we will affect the change that we so desperately need in our country. We have a broken immigration system. Our education system is floundering. Healthcare is in crisis. We have way too many Caymanians who are unemployed and seeking work. And I'm not talking about people who are making it up. I'm talking about people who are genuinely trying to find employment, but are being systematically excluded from the system. And so, if we're not going to have a government that is going to truly care about Caymanians, care about the plight that our people face, then we will get the same results that we have gotten in particular over the last 12 years. My friends, I was honored in 2000 by the people of this district. In fact, I can look across this audience and say I was honored by a large number of you who are here with us to become the youngest ever elected member in this district. And so over the next 12 years, as Shana has quite accurately pointed out, I was honored to serve this district. However, it would seem to me that some of the newcomers don't realize that I have not been elected for the last 12 years. I have not been elected for the last 12 years, and in fact, if you look at the majority of the issues that we're talking about today in this country, they have come about or been made worse in the last 12 years, or in particular, the last decade. Think about the immigration crisis. Think about the fact that we had a rollover policy that ensured that this country would not become overrun. Yet, a decade ago, it was seen fit to allow everyone to get through the system and apply for permanent residency. That was one of the single most destructive policies ever foisted upon this country. Because we now have had a decade of persons, and you can't blame the people who are arriving. You can't blame them. They're simply taking advantage of the system. Who comes to Cayman and wants to leave? That is the question. Who comes to Cayman and wants to leave? We have a country that is still worth fighting for. We have a country that, right now as we speak, is making life better for over 38,000 work permit holders. And so, let's be realistic. How many people have come to Cayman and looked on and said, nah, I'm going to pass, I want to leave? The vast majority, I'm going to say 99.9%, want to stay in our country. However, we have to make sure that after April 30th, we elect a government that is going to implement a rollover policy in this country and put it back in law and put it back to 7 years. We have to have a moratorium of the grants of Caymanian status and permanent residence for the next 24 months. We have to fix the broken business staffing plan program that is being widely abused by large companies in this country. In fact, the board members openly admit they cannot police the plans. They cannot. One of the reasons every plan that comes in is made up and constructed by each of the individual companies. Under my proposal, government is going to build a database that has uniformity, and companies who have a staffing plan that is more than 15 work permits will then have to populate the government-built database so that the board can actually police the program. Police the plan. We have a system that is so broken that we have people's work permits expiring at different dates than the expiry of the business staffing plan. How insane can we make our immigration fiasco and our immigration disaster? We have a country where you get 110 points to get permanent residency, and yet in the last decade it was seen fit to grant 30 points to anyone who invested over $500,000 in property. So let's think about this, my friends. This isn't me saying it. Let's think about this with me. If you come to an island and the island says we're going to move the rollover policy and allow everyone to get through and apply for permanent residence. In addition to that, we then implement a rule that says if you invest over $500,000 in real estate, you automatically get 30 points. You're automatically well on your way to getting permanent residency. And so for most persons who are on work permit, it's speculatively bought property. Why? It was a no-loss proposition. Our real estate market has been in a boom, and once you came time to apply for permanent residency, you were going to get 30 points. 30 points for basically pricing Caymanians out of the property market. My friends, I'm not going to delve too much into the economics, but I know all of you will understand this. Products, prices go with demand and supply. And so, if the demand, that is the number of people who want a product, exceed the amount of the product available in the market, it's going to drive the price up. My friends, it would be like if all of us, every one of you here, had your cell phone confiscated. Now we know how important those cell phones are. If every one of you had your cell phones confiscated, and there was only one cell phone put in the middle of that audience, what would that cell phone be worth? Because every one of you could want it. And so the person that's holding it could say, let's start at $100, and he's going to work his way up. And I can tell you what's going to happen is the price is going to be driven up way above what the real value and the real market value is, because the supply is in limited quantities, just like Orlando for a small country, and the demand is exceeding that supply. That's what's happened to our property market, my friends. We have allowed thousands of non-nationals to come into the country and given them an incentive, a carrot called 30 points on your permanent residency, and say, have at it. Put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. If all of you who are here were not Caymanians, and you came to this country where we can do gatherings like this and not have to worry about safety, beautiful weather, great place to raise children, and you're in a job, wouldn't you invest in that piece of property? Because here's the deal. Getting the 30 points more than likely means you're going to get your permanent residences anyway. But if you were one of the unlucky ones, you were still holding a piece of property that's going up in value. And so it was a win-win proposition for non-Caymanians, and it has driven the prices of property in this country through the roof to the point where the scariest thing for me is what is going to be available for my children, your grandchildren, as it relates to property and home ownership in this country. We have to fix the system. This is why immigration is so important. Immigration impacts so many facets of life in the Cayman Islands. Jobs. The number of people that I've met on the campaign trail who have shown me resume after resume, application after application that they're sending out. And on their resume, they will have worked at a company for, let's say, 10 years. Companies downsized, companies restructured, companies outsourced a particular function, their function. And all of a sudden, they find themselves needing a job. The number of people who are at risk of losing their homes in this country because they are now find themselves unemployed is staggering. Staggering. And one of the things that you also see in my manifesto that I'm seeking to fix is to stop the banks in their tracks. In the last decade, listen to this carefully, in the last decade, the new rules surrounding how banks are able to repossess real property has changed. And it has become much easier. And I've given this example, but I'll give it again. How can I be shown an example where a person's property is valued at $420,000? It goes somewhere around $270,000. I know I love numbers. Follow me. $150,000 equity. That is, their property is valued $150,000 more than they owe the bank. That sounds like a pretty good situation. That sounds like the bank has a solid asset that is holding. However, 2 months arrears. $5,000 is what the individual owed. And the bank wrote to them and said, if your arrears are not caught up within the next 30 days, we will begin foreclosure proceedings. And every month that you don't pay, and we have to send you a legal letter, we're adding another $2,000 to your balance. Tell me how quickly that person would be underwater and drowning. Because who is going to be able to ever catch up when you're caught in that place? The next government has got to look the banking industry in the eye and say, here are the new rules. You don't need to tell the court system, you put it in law. Amen. We cannot continue to leave our people in peril. The other practice that has to be banned immediately is any bank who sell property insurance to a homeowner and add the premium back to the loan principal. Because let's think about this. You're paying your mortgage, however, your property insurance is being covered, quote unquote covered, by the bank. And so what's happening is, as you're paying your mortgage, the amount of the premium is getting added back to the principle. This is not hearsay, these are actual stories and cases people have brought to me to see. Where I saw an individual who in 24 months paying somewhere around $1,800 a month had only managed to reduce the principal amount on their mortgage by just over $2,000. Why? Because the home insurance premium was being added back to the principal. Now I'm not suggesting that we ban the banks from selling property insurance if they want to. That is up to them. But what we must ban is them being allowed to add that back to the principal balance of the mortgage. We have to have a government that cares about the real issues that Caymanians face. Those are the real issues that Caymanians face day after day after day in this country. And yet, we have successive governments who are paying lip service to these very, very critical and important issues. My friends, I gotta tell you, this campaign has been a strong one. Strong because we came up against first, with a properly documented manifesto. We were the first team to do it. 28 pages. And I must say, I'm a bit flattered at the number of people since then who have brought out manifestos, but boy, they sure sound a whole lot like this one. They sure sound a whole lot like this one. And I say to myself, wow, you know, in the real world, plagiarism is immoral, at least illegal in some instances. In other words, you shouldn't copy. But you know what? I don't mind people copying this manifesto. Here's what. That is going to make it easier come April the 30th when you send it to the Parliament to be able to negotiate with the next government. Because clearly they agree with the contents of the manifesto because they're coming to the table with a lot of the same things and having the same solutions. So guess what? That means, my friends, that we ought to be able to put together a government, a good coalition government, relatively easily. What I have promised you throughout this campaign, and this campaign has been about issues. Every one of you who have either been at a public meeting or area meeting, you can attest. I have done nothing but talk about issues and solutions. Because this manifesto is my Bible. This is my political Bible. This is my commitment to all of you. This is what you're voting for me on. This is what you're sending me to the Parliament to work on. And so just like the Bible that we practice and follow in our daily lives, this is my political Bible. This is our political Bible. This is my promise to all of you. This is my oath and my promise. This constituency, this country, is long on promises, long on talk, but we've been very short on real action, real solutions, and making life better for Caymanians. And not only making life better, but having a vision for the future that is going to be better for all of us. But my friends, my committee has been very, very stern and been very strong. One of the best committees that I've ever been associated with. 32 strong. And they have said to me, we stick with the issues, and we stick with the issues. But there are times where I also have to defend myself. And so we have one of these younger candidates running around saying that I was elected for 3 terms, and 3 terms of nothing. Well, I have a document here that was published by the Ministry of Education just before I committed office. It is 12 pages of accomplishments just in my life. What are we talking about? The fact is, it's been a tear down and smear campaign. They know they can't beat them in the shoes. They cannot accept the fact that West Bay North is responding positively to this campaign. West Bay North wants experience over experiment. Promises over promises. West Bay North wants someone who is going to take action from day one. And so the other thing that has been done is there's another piece of history that has been recreated that's being run around. Now as I look out and I see some, how do I say this politically correct? More mature West Bayers, more mature West Bayers. How many of you remember the days when traffic was backed up from Georgetown onto Northwest Point Road? How many of us remember that? I see those hands. I see those hands. I was from Northwest Point, so I got to see it. And so, while I was in government, when the country had been ran to the brink of bankruptcy by the previous Progressive administration, and we took office in 2009, and we were borrowing to cover recurrent expenditure, this country did not have the funds to build that bypass. That was the simple fact. Now let's make sense from nonsense. Which government would want to enter into any agreement to build any road or other government assets if we have the money? That would make no sense. And so we entered the NRA agreement. And in exchange for building that road, we had a small, and let's go back to the picture here, my friends. Just after London House, the road goes over the bypass, you pass 2 hotels, the road curves back right, and you come back to Harbour Heights. That's the small portion that is somewhere around a half a mile long that has been closed. Yet you have people around here saying that we closed the entire West Bay Road. Last time I checked, I drove past the West Bay fire station. I drove past Silver Sands condos. I drove past Christopher Columbus. I drove past London House. I drove past Harbour Heights. I drove past all of those condos that are on the road, but they are recreating history, trying to make me look bad. All in the name of we can't be also on the policies. We know that he's going to deliver because we saw what he did in his last term as education minister. So let's go and try to play Pokemon with West Bayers. I have gotten numerous calls over the last 2 weeks of people saying to me that some of the new candidates have been coming to them and they want me to remind them of what we did. And those West Bay North voters implored me and told me, set the record straight, because the record must be set straight. If new candidates are going to come and lie to you during a campaign, what will they do if you elect them? Let me make sure that I'm very clear. The other thing that apparently they have decided they want to do is recreate definitions. Mudslinging is if I got up in this platform and talked about them personally, talked about their personal lives. If I defend myself and set the record straight, or challenge them on something they've said publicly, that is called debate. That is not mudslinging. They're so inexperienced they don't even know what mudslinging is. This has been around the 2000s, and I saw what mudslinging was. 5 when you get the platform and sometimes you had a duck because the numbers being slow. My friends, a candidate made a particular claim or insinuation on a debate. And I made it a point to point it out. It's up to him to clarify what he meant. Not for me. If I get up here and I say I'm a neurosurgeon, and somebody then comes behind and says, you know, Rolston Anglin is not a neurosurgeon. That's not mudslinging. That is challenging a position that I have said publicly.
Fact check
and
it.
whatever you say publicly can be fact checked.
Amen.
Up on their feelings. Like this is how inexperienced this bunch is. They get on a national radio talk show. Mind you, they didn't watch the show on very foreign. But nonetheless, get up on the talk show, all up in their feelings, purely talking about me personally. They can't say anything about this manifesto because this manifesto is what is going to deliver hope to not just West North, but the entire human island. When you look at our model for the advisory district councils, I dare say that if every area of this country follows this model, Cayman will be a better place for it. I dare say that if we follow what I'm suggesting for environment and conservation, Cayman will be a better place for it. So let me ensure that the voters of West North are not fooled by another ploy. Apparently, my plan to go to the House and negotiate with the owners of Barker's Beachland and purchase property so that we can conserve it is a bad one. And so the proposition by one of the younger candidates is that all we have to do is compulsory acquire it. Let me make sure I break this down. My friends, that would mean that government coming to you and looking at your property, piece of land that's in your name, and arbitrarily saying, we want it. We will compulsorily acquire it. How many of you are going to take that sitting down? How many Caymanians or landowners are going to take that sitting down? And in fact, if they've done their research, they will see that this current government is trying to do that right at what an election campaign is serious business, my friends. You heard my niece talk about me leaving Pricewaterhouse. You think I left my accounting career to get into politics because I wasn't serious about this thing? I am serious about this country, and we have to have people that are experienced and serious to address the crises that we are in. And let me also be clear, my friends. Just as the current government seemingly are on a mission to open our borders. Because let's look at the white paper that was published. I was asked a question and I'll answer it publicly. The white paper that was published does not enjoy my support. If you look at my manifesto goes in the opposite direction. The proposal was to move and extend the number of years people can remain in the Cayman Islands. We cannot do that, my friends. The time has come. We must get back to having a rollover policy in this country. I have said it over and over again because I need you all to understand. There's going to be organizations and companies who are going to try and scare you. They're going to try and scare you with tactics to say, oh, well, we won't be able to attract the talent that we need. Nonsense. Absolute, unadulterated nonsense. We will still be able to attract the talent to run this economy, my friends. But we have to have a breather in this country. We have granted thousands of Caymanian statuses over the last decade through the board system, through the open border system that we have, and it's now time for us to do something about it. And so, you've heard me talk about those changes in immigration, but in conjunction with that, the next government has to immediately appoint a competent immigration review team who can then come to the cabinet within 6 months, give us a firm proposal that we can take to the public so that all of you can see it, and then after consultation, go down to the parliament and fix the mess that we have, because it is a mess. You have heard me talk about the fact that if you are married to a Caymanian, you cannot get Caymanian status until it's after 15 years. Plain and simple, I believe on being tough on immigration. This country has been used and abused too much, and in some cases willingly. I'm also proposing, that's not in the manifesto, but all of you who have been to the meetings know that I'm keeping a side document with new ideas that have been brought to me. I am also proposing that we are going to put stiff penalties in place for Caymanians who actively engage in marriages of convenience, selling out the birthright that they have in this country. I wasn't more shocked when I got a call a few weeks ago by a Caymanian to tell me that a relative of theirs was married. And I know the individual, so I said to myself, married? And I looked at them and I said, what do you mean married? Yes, married, don't know who the spouse is, but that person is paid monthly. Paid monthly. We have to be serious. And I can tell you that when it comes to immigration, education, housing, banking reform, I believe in taking a tough stance. No more of this weak governance. No more of this weak approach to how we run our country. Our country needs to have men and women elected with experience who's going to be tough, going to take the job seriously, and ensure that we protect these islands at every turn, at every chance. And I can tell you, my friends, you elect Rolston Anglin, and I am going to be tough, and I am going to get the job done. And I'm taking no for an answer. We have been kicked and bamboozled for far too long, and it's time now for Caymanians to stand up and stand with a government who is going to protect you, who's going to do what it takes to make this country a wonderful place it has the potential, still has the potential to be. I could not tell you the Cayman Islands is still one of the best places on earth. Jesus needs to have it work for Caymanians. It needs to work for Caymanians. That is what this country needs to do. It needs to work for Caymanians. My friends, I can tell you that the insurance industry is yet another one that I'm not going to ignore if elected, when elected. Think about this. What's the healthiest period for most people's life? When you're young. That's usually when you're the healthiest. Thank God, the vast majority of children, not just in Cayman, but in any place on earth that has a decent economy, children are relatively healthy. Yet, let's think about this. When a Caymanian goes to get health insurance, look at the spike in premiums that are charged once they want to add children. Tell me how that makes any sense. Tell me how it makes any health sense. Very few children actually get sick. Yet when a parent goes to add their children onto their plan, it spikes up by hundreds of dollars. And so I take the view that the government needs to introduce universal health care for all Caymanians of education age and below. That is going to save the average Caymanian household hundreds of dollars every month. Because there's two ways to address cost of living. And one way is to bring the cost that impacts everyone down. Every person in this country who are working have to have health insurance. The law then says you have to insure your children. And therefore we are forcing Caymanians into incurring hundreds of dollars every month in premiums that they barely use because most children do not get sick. And the fact is, let's think about it as a risk to the government. But you might say, well, Rolston, what will be the cost implication of that for government? The fact is, because most children don't get sick, it's not going to cost as much as people may think. But then you might say, well, then Rolston, what about the few children? And let's just say you have an unfortunate case of a child that needs some special or additional education need, or God forbid, childhood cancer. But here's what I want you to do. Any person that you know whose child has a special or additional education need, ask them how deplorable the coverage is from the insurance companies. They get a couple $100 and after that they have to pay for it anyway. They get a couple $100 and guess where they wind up? Knocking on the door of NAU or the Department of Financial Assistance because government then has to pick up the slack. The vast majority of children in this country who wind up with any form of serious illness or condition usually winds up right back on government's doorstep anyway. And if you think that is a fact, if you think that's fiction, go and ask parents. Ask any parent who has a child and ask them how much of that cover did they get from insurance companies. And so the net cost of this is not going to be tremendously high because the Cayman Islands government right now is paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars every month to cover special education needs for children who have autism, ADHD, and other childhood conditions that insurance policies are simply not covering. And so, my friends, I can promise you, we are going to tackle health insurance. We're also going to ensure, I'm also going to ensure that Caymanians, when they get older, are not going to have this system where you go to the Department of Financial Assistance, you get coverage, but it's for 3 to 6 months. If somebody is 70 years old and have an illness or a condition that need cynical health coverage, what are the odds that in 3 to 6 months they're miraculously going to be cured and no longer need it? Right now, I have multiple cases that I'm following up on behalf of West Bay North residents that are in this condition, in this position. They get cynical for 3 months and then are kicked off the system and told they got to reapply. Frustrating people, costing more administratively. The madness must end. If a senior citizen has need for coverage, we need to interface with the doctors, and once it's deemed to be permanent, they need to be put on permanent care. It's that simple. We can't have people in that vulnerable state having to apply and reapply and reapply and reapply. Why? Why are people being frustrated this way? The madness must stop, my friends. The madness must stop. I'll touch on one last point. You've heard me say it in the chamber debate. The need for additional investments by government, capital projects in our beloved West Bay has reached, in my opinion, a critical position. When I demanded office in 2013, I left a sensible plan on how to build out the additional buildings needed at the Sir Johnny Cumber Primary School. As all of you will know, the last building that was built there, I built it under my ministry and under my leadership. And so the plan was to use that same approach and simply build additional classroom blocks across the campus. And once you do that, then the older buildings could be torn down. Can you believe that there's a portion of that primary school that is there, that was there when I was in primary school? Think about that. We still have a wing, the wing closest to the public library. Those were the classrooms that were there when I was there. And so, you've heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. Whenever facilities get in the way of optimal teaching and learning, that's the time you need to build. And we do need to build additional classroom blocks for the Sir Johnny Cumber Primary School. We also know that Clifton Hunter and John Gray High School are bursting at the seams. We do not have as a country adequate class spaces in secondary education. This isn't a fallacy, this is a fact. And therefore, we have reached this point where we do need a third secondary high school in this country. We know that the Smith High School was broken ground on many years ago and we couldn't afford to build it at that time. But the time has come. Whether it's a phased implementation or however we do it, we do need to start the process of building the much needed third high school in Cayman. But now I'm going to tell you this. Let me make you a promise. For some reason, candidates, incumbents, have been avoiding an uncomfortable truth. Avoiding an uncomfortable truth to tell you, the public. If you're going to build a house, you're going to go out, you're going to get quotes, you're going to negotiate, and you're going to try to get the best possible value for money. The government system, because we have went so overboard with trying to have boxes to tick, when government actually engages to build projects, government is barred from negotiating. Tell me what sense that makes. When we built the government administration building, and the cost of that was in excess of $100 million, I had a person who was a partner at a firm who had just built a building for their own firm, who on a per square footage basis built their building for almost 50% less than the Cayman Islands government did. If you want to find a way for us to have savings in this country, it is for people like myself who are candidates, and when you become elected, you get up and you tell the country the truth. Now, don't get me wrong, let me be very clear. Let me be very, very clear. The system has got to be clear and transparent so that there's a clear, transparent bid system so that no corruption can happen. But it can't be so restrictive that you then can't negotiate and get the best deal possible for the country. That makes no sense, my friends. Government cannot continue to do business the way it used to and you expect a better result. As I said, did we have weaknesses in the system when I first got elected? Yes, there were. But the fact is we went way overboard trying to fix those issues, and now we wound up spending way too much money. And so the fact is, just as we can have an independent group of or organization that is the asset acquiring unit that actually does all the tendering, if we can trust them to pick the winning bid, why can't we then trust them to negotiate the best price? That makes no sense to me. If they can be trusted to run a clean system that is free of manipulation and corruption, they ought to be then entrusted to go that last step and get us the best value for money. Because here's how the rubber meets the road. When we overspend by 10, 15, 20, $30 million, that is an asset or another building that we are then having to forego. And trust me, that is by how much we have overspent on government projects in this country. And we have to stop the madness. My friends, we are 25 days from April the 30th. Yeah, I kind of wish we were in October. I'll be having my first public meeting. We're 25 days from April the 30th. I'm asking you, I'm imploring you, vote. Number one, vote for myself, vote for yourself. A vote for me is a vote for you. A vote for me is a vote for Cayman. A vote for me is a vote for your children. A vote for me is a vote for your grandchildren. We have to take our country back. We have to elect people who are experienced and serious about the business of the country. My friends, I'm imploring you, come out and vote. If you say you support me, come out and vote for me. The only way you can truly support me is by coming out and voting for me. Patting me on the back and saying, well, I support you, but then not showing up and vote is not support. That is being nice. So I want you to be nice. I like the pats on the back, but I want you to take that one step further. Let us get out in masses and show this constituency and this island that we mean business, that we are going to send a representative that is experienced and serious about democracy, serious about the parliament, is going to fight against one-man vote and restore multiple voting in our country, and is going to give you back a greater voice for advisory district councils. We have to take the country back, and the only way to do it is to vote. Your most powerful statement you can make is to show up and vote. And so I'm begging you, I'm imploring you, make your plan. The manifesto has a phone number on the front. If you have a difficulty with getting transportation, call the number. We will set the transportation up for you and get you to the polls. We're not going to have any excuses for anyone not to vote come April 30th. And so in 25 days, my friends, we are going to vote for the change that we need. We are going to make the change we need in this country. I have every confidence that all of you that are here, all of you that are watching on social media, all of you who have offered me encouragement during this campaign are going to come out in droves and vote Rolston Anglin on April the 30th. Vote number one of April the 30th. Get up early, get to the polls, vote, and enjoy the rest of your day. For those of you who have to work, make your plan on how you're going to get to the polls. And again, if you have a difficulty, 323-0926, call us. We will make arrangements and help you get to the polls so that you can exercise your democratic right. April 30th, my friends. April 30th, and all of you have known that for a while now, for a few campaigns, what are we going to do? Vote one and get it done. Vote one to march down what street? Freedom Street. We must march down Freedom Street come April the 30th, my friends. Let us do it together. It is together that we will make this change. So let us walk down Freedom Street with number one. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.